Welcome back to Vuln Vibes. In this episode, we're going to talk about Plesk vulnerability.
And this is one for everyone deep in the trenches. If you're a sysadmin on an IR team, a security architect, you need to treat this as an immediate critical threat brief.
Absolutely. Our mission today isn't just to read an alert. We need to do a rapid postmortem on the systemic failure behind this thing. We have to extract the technical details and really analyze the risk.
For everyone, from shared hosting giants all the way to internal enterprise setups using Plesk, the risk profile is huge.
So the headline is pretty stark. We've got a critical flaw in Plesk, CVE 2025-66430. It lets an authenticated low-privilege user get immediate, stable root access.
And that's the key, isn't it? It's not some complex chain. It's a direct shot, a severe privilege escalation that hits the very foundation of the hosting infrastructure's trust model.
It's the kind of thing that wakes up the CISO.
Oh, for sure, because Plesk is meant to be that central control plane, right? It's supposed to enforce separation between potentially thousands of untrusted users on one box.
And when the control plane itself is compromised.
The entire isolation model it collapses.
Okay, let's unpack this, specifically for the sysadmins and security teams facing immediate patching decisions. The identifier is CVE 2025-66430. It bypasses core security controls. But what's the mechanism? Where did the architecture actually fail?
So the location of the flaw is what makes it so insidious. The intelligence points to how Plesk handles its own authentication and authorization.
Okay.
Specifically, it's targeting the password-protected directories feature.
Wait. The feature designed for a client to add more security to lock down a directory. That's the way in.
That's the irony. The tool for simple HTTP basic auth, something a user sets up in the control panel, that's the gateway to root.
How? Is it an input sanitization problem or something deeper?
It looks like a major failure in authorization logic. That, coupled with, really insufficient input handling when it processes the user's data for the config files.
So like the .htaccess files that power the feature.
Exactly. The attacker starts as a low-priv user, and they find a way to inject commands or manipulate file paths right through that feature's configuration settings.
And that lets them write files outside their restricted web root.
Right. And when a high-privilege plus background process comes along and executes that file or script, boom, you have an immediate elevation to root.
So an attacker with a minimal footprint, maybe a single compromised FTP account, can pivot from a standard client account all the way up to system root.
That's the path. And the result isn't just a breach. It's the total erasure of the security model on that server.
Complete control over the entire hosting environment.
Complete control. They can modify kernel settings, install whatever they want, and critically operate completely undetected by standard application level monitoring.
That invisibility, that shifts the focus to what they do next. The payload, the persistence, what are they after once they get root?
Well, beyond the obvious goal of grabbing sensitive customer data, which is the huge compliance liability, they prioritize modifying core system configs.
Like disabling security features.
Exactly. Disabling Linux or a parmer to make their life easier later. Then they deploy their payloads, crypto miners, spam relays, credential harvesting scripts on the hosted sites. But the biggest threat is establishing deep, persistent backdoors.
And are we talking about just dropping an SSH key in the root account? Or something more clever?
It's much stealthier. Think modifying systemed units, planting root cron jobs, or, and this is the most concerning in a Plesk environment, hooking into Plesk's own event handlers.
So it survives a reboot?
It survives reboots, it survives standard patch deployments, unless the remediation process is specifically hunting for these artifacts.
And that kind of scalability, that makes CVE 2025-66430 incredibly attractive to threat actors who are targeting infrastructure at scale.
They're not going after individual sites, they're going after the entire server farm, the gold mine.
Which brings us to the shared hosting risk. That's the real multiplier here.
It's a massive multiplier. This isn't linear risk anymore. It's exponential.
Yeah.
It's a cascading failure waiting to happen in any multi-tenant environment.
So walk us through that. What does root on the OS mean in a shared Plesk box with hundreds of customers?
It means every boundary you thought you had is gone. The moment an attacker gets root, they bypass all of Plesk's user separation. Instantly.
Which leads to cross-contamination of data.
Immediate cross-contamination. That one small compromised user account on that Plesk server becomes the pivot point to expose the environments of every single other customer on that machine.
That scale is just terrifying. It turns one small security event into an infrastructure-wide data breach.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, The risk isn't just vertical privilege escalation, but massive horizontal pivoting.
So a security team has to assume if one server is pumped, every customer on it is compromised.
That's the only safe assumption. It's the definition of a single point of trust failure.
And that lateral movement is the ultimate red flag. Root access means they can pivot across all hosted accounts, not just web files, but databases.
Everything. Client databases, proprietary business data, financial records, confidential info across dozens or hundreds of client sites. It doesn't matter how good the client's own application security is.
It completely nullifies it. Your WAF doesn't matter if they own the OS underneath it.
Which is why patching isn't just a tech issue, it's a fiduciary and compliance requirement.
Okay, let's talk about that. The non-technical fallout. When customer data gets exposed this way, the regulatory heat must be immediate.
Oh, it's severe. And potentially ruinous. For big providers, just dealing with the notification requirements can be more expensive than the technical fix.
And you're risking violations of GDPR, CCPA?
All of them. GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, maybe even HIPAA, depending on who your customers are. And these frameworks have teeth.
Big financial penalties and strict notification timelines.
Yeah.
And trying to defend not patching a known critical CVE like this,
Yeah.
that's not going to fly in an audit.
Not at all. The excuse of it was in next week's sprint just doesn't work when there's a known easy path to root. The expectation is immediate action.
And it's important to say, this isn't just a risk for the big shared hosting companies.
No, absolutely not.
Even dedicated enterprise setups using Plesk for multi-tenant management, say for different business units, they're just as vulnerable to this lateral movement.
Agreed. Any environment where Plesk is separating accounts on the same OS is vulnerable. So let's get into the immediate, actionable mitigation strategy.
First step has to be inventory, right?
Yeah.
You have to know what you have.
It's paramount. You need to immediately verify every single Plesk installation to see which versions are affected. If you're running a vulnerable version, the clock is ticking. This patch has to go to the top of the list.
But rolling out patches across a huge fleet takes time. What about layer defenses? What can you do in that patch window to limit the blast radius?
Defense in depth is key. So network segmentation is a big one, though it can be tough in older environments. Even simple firewall rules to limit server-to-server traffic can help.
And what about something more immediate?
More practically, apply strict temporary access controls. Limit external access to the Plesk control panel itself. And if you can, temporarily disable or at least heavily audit the password-protected directories feature, since that's the entry vector.
Let's talk monitoring. What should teams be hunting for right now to see if they're already being exploited?
You have to focus on the vector and the result. So enhanced monitoring of any privilege escalation attempts and unusual admin activity.
Where do you look?
Look at your auth logs, obviously, but also dive deep into the Plesk-specific logs, usually under varlog Plesk. Configure specific alerts for rapid privilege changes. A user jumping from, say, www data to root in milliseconds. That's the signature of this kind of exploit.
Okay, so the patch is deployed. It's the post-mortem phase. How do you make sure the environment is actually clean and not backdoored?
You have to assume compromise until you can prove otherwise. That means you go deeper than just a vuln scan.
So a full security audit.
A full audit, specifically looking for artifacts of persistence that might have been planted before you patched. Check for modified SSH keys, weird cron jobs, and especially any malicious hooks inside Plesk's own config files or scheduler.
And then zoom out to the rest of the infrastructure.
Exactly. You need a comprehensive vulnerability assessment across the whole hosting environment. Look for any lateral pathways an attacker might have used after they got root on that first Plesk box. Did they jump to another server? You have to close all the doors, not just the front one.
This all really brings us back to the baseline strategy for any critical infrastructure.
It does. Regular, deep vulnerability assessments and aggressive, timely patch management. These aren't just best practices. When the target is a core component like Plesk, they are existential requirements for keeping customer trust and staying compliant.
So let's do a quick summary. The focus is CVE 2025-66430. It's a critical Plesk user-to-root flaw. The vector is the password-protected directories feature. And the massive risk multiplier is the shared hosting environment, which enables devastating lateral movement and creates huge regulatory exposure.
So what does this all mean?
It means this patch is not negotiable. For anyone using Plesk, this has to move to the absolute top of the sprint backlog. It needs to be deployed with extreme urgency and then followed immediately by a deep audit for any signs of persistence.
And as you're doing that, as you're pushing out those patches, I want you to think about the architectural debt we're paying for here. The reason this flaw is so critical is because it leverages a normal client-facing feature to shatter the root trust boundary. So this raises a much bigger question for everyone building these systems. What fundamental assumptions about user separation and multi-tenant control panels do we need to radically reevaluate? If a simple feature like this can expose the entire OS, then the entire trust model needs to be re-examined from the ground up, especially with how fast new zero days are being found in these core infrastructure components.